She's your burden now!
You abandoned me the way she abandoned her child.
Handle it, Natalie, like you always do.
Don't be so small, Natalie. I'm giving her the life you can't. Stop being selfish and let her go to her real family.
Is it me, Lee?
My name is Natalie, and on the day I turned 24, I was graduating with honors from nursing school. After years of working 2 jobs, juggling classes, and paying my own way, this was supposed to be it. The moment my family finally saw me, the moment they would finally be proud. But as I looked out into the crowd, the 2 seats I saved for them were empty. They showed up 45 minutes late and left before I even got my diploma. Later, my mother's excuse was simple. Amanda had a bad breakup, she said. She needed us. Standing there, I had never felt more invisible. I thought that was the worst it could get. I had no idea that a few months later, that same sister would show up and hand me a problem that would define my life and lead to a courtroom war over $5 million. If you've ever felt like the backup plan in your own family, let me know what city you're watching from. And make sure you like and subscribe, because you're going to want to see how this story of betrayal ends. That rainy Tuesday night, my old life ended. I stood in my apartment, the silence broken only by the soft breathing of a 3-month-old baby girl sleeping in a car seat on my floor. A baby my sister had left behind like a forgotten package. My first call to my parents was met with a brutal finality. My father's voice was cold as ice. "She's your burden now." 7 words. 7 words that severed the last thread of hope that I wasn't completely on my own. My boyfriend, Mark, was even worse. When I called him, panicking, his response was a gut punch. "A baby? Natalie, you need to call social services. This isn't our problem." Our problem? He had already separated himself from me, from this new reality. That night, I realized I was an island. I was utterly and completely alone. The first few years were a blur of survival. My dream of becoming a head nurse, of climbing the ladder at Memorial Hospital, it evaporated. 12-hour shifts and emergency calls weren't compatible with a baby who depended on me for everything. So I made a choice. I left the high-pressure, high-stakes world of the hospital and took a job as a school nurse. The pay was a significant cut, but the hours were a godsend. 8 to 4, holidays off, summers off. It was a career sacrifice, a massive one. When I told my parents, my father just scoffed. "A school nurse? So you're putting Band-Aids on scraped knees all day? All that potential, wasted." They saw it as a step down. A failure. They had no idea it was the first brick I laid in the foundation of a new life. A life built around Lily. While my family saw a woman who had given up, the world outside saw something different. At work, I wasn't just another nurse. I poured every ounce of my skill and dedication into that job. I streamlined the student health record system, implemented new wellness programs, and became the go-to person for any parent with a complex medical question. My supervisor, a woman named Mrs. Davison, saw my work ethic. She saw the passion that hadn't died, but had simply been redirected. I wasn't just putting on Band-Aids. I was creating a haven for hundreds of kids, and in doing so, I was building a reputation. A reputation for competence, for reliability, for being the person who got things done. But my day didn't end at 4 o'clock. After I'd picked Lily up from daycare, made dinner, given her a bath, read her 3 bedtime stories, and finally tucked her in, my second day began. Around 9 p.m., I'd open my laptop. I had quietly gotten certified as a remote health consultant, a telehealth nurse. From my small living room couch, I advised patients across the country, reviewed medical charts, and provided consultations for a national health service. The work was demanding, requiring intense focus after an already exhausting day. Some nights I'd work until 2 in the morning, fueled by coffee and the quiet determination to build a fortress around my little girl. And that fortress was being built, $1 at a time. Every cent from that second job went into a separate account, an account my family knew nothing about. They saw me living in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, driving a sensible used car, and buying Lily's clothes from Target. My mother would often comment, with a hint of pity in her voice, "It must be so hard for you, dear, doing it all on your own." I'd just smile and nod. I let them believe it. I let them see the struggling single mom because it was easier than explaining the truth. The truth was, I was building a secret weapon. A college fund for Lily that was steadily growing into 5 figures. An emergency fund that could keep us afloat for a year if anything ever happened to my job. Financial independence. That was the real goal. Freedom from ever having to depend on them for anything, ever again. But the most powerful weapon I was building wasn't financial. It was our life. It was a decade of meticulously documented moments. Every parent-teacher conference where Lily's teachers would rave about what a bright, well-adjusted child she was. Every doctor's visit, with records showing a healthy, thriving little girl. I saved every piece of artwork, every report card, every photo of her smiling at a birthday party or proudly showing off a lost tooth. My phone's camera roll was an archive of our happiness. Our weekends weren't fancy. They were trips to the park, where I became friends with the other parents. They were visits to the local library, where the librarians knew us by name. Our community was small, but it was real. Our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Santiago, became a surrogate grandmother to Lily. My coworkers organized a baby shower for me a month after Lily arrived, showering us with essentials. These people, these connections, they were the true pillars of our world. My family saw none of this. To them, I was still just Natalie, the responsible one, the one who was good at handling things. They saw my small apartment and my sensible car and assumed I was just getting by. They had no concept of the life I had built, the financial security I had painstakingly created, or the army of witnesses who saw me not as a martyr, but as a dedicated, loving mother every single day for 10 years. They saw a woman living a small life. They had no idea they were looking at a queen who had quietly, patiently, built her own damn castle. For 10 years, life found its rhythm. A quiet, steady beat of school days and Sunday mornings at the park. Lily was thriving. She was 9, in 4th grade, a bright, funny kid with my sister's artistic talent, but a steadiness that was all her own. The past was a scar, but it had faded. Then, the phone rang. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but some instinct made me answer. "Hello, Natalie." The voice was hesitant, almost a ghost's whisper from a life I'd left behind. It was Amanda. She was in town. She was clean, sober for 7 years, she said. She was married to a man named Thomas, had a degree in graphic design, and a life that sounded polished and perfect. She wanted to meet. My emotions were a chaotic mess of old anger and a strange, cautious hope. Maybe this could be good for Lily. To know her birth mother. I agreed. The woman who walked into the coffee shop was almost unrecognizable. The wild, haunted look in her eyes was gone, replaced by a composed, sophisticated stranger. We talked for hours. I showed her photos, a decade of a life she had missed. She cried. She seemed genuinely remorseful. We started with supervised visits, short public meetings at a children's museum or the park. Lily was shy, clinging to my hand, but Amanda was respectful. She never pushed. She never overstepped. She seemed to understand that she was a visitor in the world I had built. After a few months, she dropped the news that she and Thomas were moving to our city permanently. To be closer to Lily, she said. A small warning bell rang in my head, but I silenced it. This is what you wanted, I told myself, for Lily to have a connection to her past. The signs started small, little things that felt off. The questions became more pointed, more frequent. My mother would call, her voice dripping with an unnerving sweetness. How are things at the school, dear? Is it a full-time position? Do you get good benefits? Then Amanda would text. Just curious, what's the rent like in your neighborhood these days? Thomas and I are looking at houses. It was like they were probing, gathering intelligence. There was an undercurrent I couldn't quite grasp, a feeling of being watched, of being assessed. I felt a familiar, cold dread creeping back in, but I couldn't put my finger on why. Not yet. The first real move came just before Lily's 10th birthday. It was a Friday afternoon, and I'd left work a little early to surprise Lily with a trip to her favorite ice cream parlor. As I pulled up to her school, I saw a scene that made my stomach clench. Standing by the pickup area next to my daughter was my mother, and next to her, beaming like she was the mother of the year, was Amanda. My mother rarely, if ever, came to Lily's school. I parked the car, my hands gripping the steering wheel. "Mom? Amanda? What are you guys doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. My mother turned, her smile wide and artificial. "Oh, Natalie, we were just about to take Lily for a special birthday shopping trip. Amanda is throwing her a surprise party on Sunday." I stared at her, completely stunned. A surprise party? I had already planned Lily's party. A small sleepover with her 3 best friends, just like she wanted. We had talked about it for weeks. "What party?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Lily looked between us, her own excitement fading into confusion. "Grandma said Aunt Amanda rented out the whole bowling alley," she said, "and she invited my whole class." Amanda stepped forward, her expression a perfect mask of innocent generosity. "I just wanted to do something special for her, Natalie. She deserves a big, splashy party. Mom and Dad even helped me get the contact list for her classmates from the school office." They went behind my back. To the school. Using my parents as their agents, they had completely bulldozed my plans, my authority, my role. They were staging a coup, and Lily's birthday was the battleground. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't a gift. This was a power play. A public declaration. "Cancel it," I said. The words were flat. Hard. "Her party is on Saturday, at our home, like we planned." Amanda's smile finally faltered. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. "Don't be so dramatic. I'm just trying to give her the things you can't. Don't be selfish." Selfish. The word hit me like a physical blow. After 10 years of sacrifice, of putting every single one of Lily's needs before my own, she called me selfish. In front of my daughter, she was telling me that my love, my stability, my presence, it wasn't enough. That it could all be bought and replaced by a rented-out bowling alley. I looked at my sister, at the stranger standing in front of me, and I saw her for what she truly was. I took Lily's hand. "You have crossed a line, Amanda," I said, and walked away. That was the opening shot. The war had begun, but I was still naive enough to think it would be fought with words, with tense family dinners. I never imagined how dirty they were willing to play. A week later, I received a call from Mrs. Davison, Lily's school principal. Her voice was professional, but I could hear the discomfort underneath. "Ms. Parker, could you come down to the school when you have a moment? There's a matter regarding Lily I need to discuss with you." My heart hammered against my ribs. I drove to the school in a cold panic, my mind racing through 1,000 terrible possibilities. Had Lily been hurt? Was she in trouble? When I walked into the principal's office, the scene before me stopped me dead. There, sitting in the chairs opposite Mrs. Davison's desk, were Amanda and her husband, Thomas. They both had expressions of deep, sincere concern etched on their faces. It was a performance. A damn good one. "Ms. Parker, please, have a seat," Mrs. Davison said, gesturing to the empty chair beside them. My body moved, but my mind was reeling. Thomas spoke first, his voice smooth as silk, dripping with false sympathy. "Mrs. Davison, we just wanted to express some serious concerns. We love Natalie, of course, but she's on her own. She works 2 jobs. The apartment is small. And lately, we've noticed that Lily seems, well, a bit anxious. A little neglected, perhaps." Neglected? The word hung in the air, venomous and obscene. I felt the air leave my lungs. I couldn't speak. Amanda picked up the narrative, her eyes welling with crocodile tears. "We're just worried she isn't getting the attention she needs, the stability of a 2-parent home. We felt it was our duty to bring this to the school's attention, to make you aware, in case you noticed any signs, that things at home aren't what they should be." It was a premeditated character assassination. They weren't trying to win over a judge. They were trying to poison the well. They were turning Lily's safe space, her school, into a weapon against me. They were building a paper trail of lies, planting seeds of doubt in the minds of the people I trusted to care for my child every day. I finally found my voice. It came out shaky, but filled with a fury I had never known. "This is a lie. This is a family dispute, and you are attempting to use this school and my daughter's well-being as leverage in a custody battle you are planning to start." Mrs. Davison looked between us, her face a mask of professional neutrality, but I could see the conflict in her eyes. The meeting ended with her assuring everyone that the school's primary concern was Lily's welfare. As we stood to leave, Amanda and her husband walked out ahead of me. In the hallway, just out of earshot of the principal's office, Thomas turned back to me. The concerned facade was gone. In its place was a cold, triumphant smirk. "Everything is being documented, Natalie," he whispered. "Every concern, every report. Remember that when we're in court." And that was it. The final illusion shattered. This wasn't about what was best for Lily. It never had been. This was about winning. At any cost. They were willing to burn my life to the ground, to paint me as an unfit mother, to traumatize my child, just to get what they wanted. I walked out of that school, the place I had worked so hard to make a second home for my daughter, and I felt nothing but a cold, clear, and absolute rage, the kind of rage that burns away all the pain and all the fear, leaving behind something hard, sharp, and unbreakable. They had made a fatal mistake. They had pushed the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who always cleaned up their messes, too far. At this point, I don't even have the words to describe the level of betrayal here. If you're feeling the same anger I am right now, do me a favor. Drop one word in the comments that describes their actions. Just one word. But instead of breaking me, that rage became fuel, a cold fire. And I knew, right then and there, that I wasn't just going to fight them. I was going to dismantle their entire world. I drove home from school that day, but I don't remember the drive. I don't remember the traffic, or the turns, or pulling into my parking spot. My mind was a white-hot blank. The rage from Thomas's whispered threat had burned itself out, leaving behind something far more dangerous. A chilling, absolute clarity. I walked into my apartment, the one they called small, and looked around. I saw the crayon drawing Lily made for me taped to the fridge, the pile of her shoes by the door, and the stuffed bunny she couldn't sleep without lying on the couch. This wasn't a small life. This was an entire universe, and they had just declared war on it. For my entire life, I had been chasing their approval. A ghost. I worked harder, achieved more, stayed quieter, all in the desperate hope that one day they would finally see me, that they would finally say, "Well done, Natalie." The visit to the principal's office, it was the final nail in the coffin of that hope. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a strategic, calculated attack designed to paint me as unstable, as neglectful, as unfit. They didn't just want Lily. They wanted to destroy me in the process. I walked into my bedroom and closed the door. I didn't cry. The tears were gone, burned away by the fury. I sat on the edge of my bed, the silence of the apartment pressing in on me, and in that silence, a single thought echoed through my mind, over and over. Enough. No more fixing their mistakes. No more cleaning up their messes. No more turning the other cheek. This was it. There would be no next time. They would never, ever change. And my desire for their love, for their acceptance, it had been the cage that kept me trapped for 34 years. With that final, cold realization, the cage door swung open. The pain of it all, the decades of being second best, of being the reliable afterthought, it didn't vanish. It crystallized. It transformed from a heavy weight on my soul into a block of ice in my veins. A cold, hard source of energy. I didn't pick up the phone to scream at them. I didn't text my mother a string of furious accusations. That's what they expected. The emotional, overly sensitive Natalie. Instead, I did something they would never see coming. I got quiet. I opened my laptop. My hands were steady. My purpose? Clear. The war had been declared, and I was about to assemble my arsenal. My first move was to secure a general. I spent the next 2 hours researching the top family law attorneys in the state. I wasn't looking for someone cheap. I was looking for a shark. I found her. Julia Hernandez. Her website was filled with testimonials from clients in high-conflict custody cases. Her motto was simple: protecting the child is the only victory that matters. I looked at my secret savings account, the one I'd built in the dead of night, the one meant for Lily's future. This was Lily's future. Without hesitation, I transferred a 5-figure sum to my checking account. The next morning, I called Ms. Hernandez's office and paid her retainer in full. "I want to be proactive," I told her paralegal. "I believe a petition is imminent." My second move was to gather intelligence. I found the number for the private investigator I had hired a decade ago, a gruff, no-nonsense guy named Frank. He remembered my case. "Let me guess," he said when I told him Amanda was back. "She wants the kid." "She wants more than that, Frank," I replied. "She wants to erase me. I need you to dig into her and her new husband, Thomas Richards. I want to know everything: their finances, their business, their social media, any debts, any past relationships, everything." I paused, then added the crucial piece. "And Frank, I need you to find out who Lily's biological father is. Amanda never told me. For 10 years, it hasn't mattered. But now, I have a feeling it matters a great deal." I sent him a substantial payment from my main account, an expense I knew they might track, but the real work would be funded by cash withdrawals over the next few weeks. My final and most important move was to organize my own evidence. For years, I had saved everything, not out of spite, but out of a habit born from dealing with my unpredictable family. I had a digital folder on my computer labeled simply "Family." It was my own private Pandora's box. I spent the entire weekend transforming it from a chaotic collection of memories into a weaponized archive. I created subfolders, meticulously. The first was titled Parental Communication. I went back through a decade of emails and text messages. I documented every canceled holiday visit from my parents, with their flimsy excuses attached. I screenshotted every critical comment from my mother about my parenting or my apartment. I found the email thread from Lily's 7th birthday, where I had invited them 3 months in advance, only to have them tell me the day before that they had prior commitments, which I later found out was a weekend trip to a wine festival with friends. I compiled a timeline that showed a clear pattern of disinterest and criticism, not the loving, involved grandparents they would undoubtedly claim to be in court. The next folder was Lily's life. This was the heart of my case. I scanned every report card, showing straight A's and glowing comments from teachers. I downloaded every email from the school, from me volunteering for bake sales to my consistent attendance at every parent-teacher conference. I created a spreadsheet of every doctor and dentist appointment, every checkup, and every vaccination. A perfect record of health and well-being. I uploaded hundreds of photos and videos, organized by year. Lily learning to ride her bike, Lily at her first ballet recital, the one my parents didn't attend, Lily blowing out the candles on 10 different birthday cakes. It was an undeniable, 10-year-long highlight reel of a happy, thriving, and deeply loved child. Finally, I created a folder called Amanda. It contained the single, crumpled note she had left with Lily. It contained the police report I filed when she disappeared. It contained the few emails I had sent to her old, defunct address over the years, updating her on Lily's milestones, emails that had all bounced back, undeliverable. It was a folder documenting a decade of absence, a decade of silence. As I worked, my phone would buzz with texts from my mother. "Natalie, we need to talk about this. You're being unreasonable." And later, from Amanda. "I can't believe you're shutting us out like this. We're only trying to help Lily." I read them, and I didn't reply. My silence was my new power. They had expected hysterics, a screaming match, a dramatic confrontation. They didn't know how to handle the quiet, the calm. They mistook my silence for fear, for surrender. They thought I was a cornered animal, too scared to fight back. They had no idea I was a hunter, patiently sharpening my knives, waiting for them to walk into the trap they had set for me. They thought they were building a case against a struggling single mom. They were about to find out they were going to war with a woman who had spent a decade building an unbreachable fortress, brick by silent brick, and she had every single receipt. The day of the court hearing felt unreal. The county courthouse was an imposing building of cold stone and glass, designed to make you feel small. I wore a simple navy blue suit, the most professional thing I owned, a silent armor against the storm to come. Lily was staying with her art teacher, a kind woman who had volunteered to keep her away from the tension of the courtroom. Across the aisle, my family sat like a portrait of perfect unity. Amanda was in a conservative floral dress, the picture of maternal softness. Thomas, in a perfectly tailored suit, radiated financial success. And behind them, my parents. My mother clutched her purse, a nervous tic I'd known my whole life, while my father stared straight ahead, his jaw set in that stubborn line that meant his mind was made up. They were a united front, confident. They believed they were in control. The proceedings began. Amanda took the stand first. It was a masterclass in performance. She told a compelling story of a young, lost girl who made a terrible mistake. She spoke of her battle with addiction, her hard-won sobriety, and her deep, maternal longing for the child she had given up. She wept at just the right moments, dabbing her eyes with a tissue as she described her profound regret. "I wasn't fit to be a mother then," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "But I have worked so hard every single day to become someone worthy of being Lily's mom. I want to give her the life she deserves. A life with a mother and a father, in a loving, stable home." Thomas was next. He was smooth, polished. He spoke of their 4-bedroom house with its big backyard, the top-tier school district they had specifically chosen with Lily in mind, and his 6-figure income that could provide for every possible need. He talked about college funds, family vacations to Europe, and opportunities that I, a humble school nurse, could never offer. We can give Lily stability and advantages that are simply not possible in her current situation, he said, looking at the judge with unwavering confidence. While we respect what Natalie has done, a child belongs with her mother. Then came my parents. My mother took the stand and spoke of her immense pride in Amanda's recovery. She painted a picture of me as a difficult, stubborn caregiver who had resisted their attempts to be involved in Lily's life. Natalie has always been possessive, she said with a long-suffering sigh. Once she decided Lily was hers, she made it very difficult for the rest of us. We tried to be there, but she shut us out. It was a complete fabrication, a twisted version of reality where their neglect became my fault. My father followed, his testimony brief but brutal. He described me as controlling and unwilling to do what was best for the child. Blood is blood, he stated, his voice firm. Natalie has done her duty, but it's time for Lily to be with her real family. Each word was a physical blow. They were erasing a decade of my life, of my love, of my sacrifice, and replacing it with a convenient, self-serving lie. Amanda's lawyer then cross-examined me, his questions designed to dismantle my life piece by piece. He grilled me about my finances, my modest apartment, and my lack of a romantic partner. Is it not true, Ms. Parker, that you work 2 jobs just to make ends meet? I work a second job to build a college fund for my daughter. I corrected him, my voice steady. And you live in a 2-bedroom rental, correct? Not a house? We live in a home Lily loves, in a community where she feels safe. I answered every question truthfully, but the implication was clear. I was not enough. My home was not enough. My love was not enough. Then it was our turn. My lawyer, Ms. Hernandez, began to build our fortress. She called Lily's current teacher, who described me as one of the most involved and attentive parents she had ever worked with. She called the school counselor, who provided professional testimony about the profound bond between me and Lily, and the potential trauma of separating a child from her primary caregiver. She called Mrs. Santiago, my neighbor, who tearfully described the countless times she had seen me patiently teaching Lily to ride her bike or comforting her after a bad dream. One by one, they laid the bricks of our life, of our truth. Finally, Ms. Hernandez turned to me. I spoke from the heart. I told the court about the terror of that first night and the fierce, protective love that grew from it. I described our Friday movie nights, our inside jokes, our small, precious traditions. I am not Lily's biological mother, I said, my voice clear and strong despite the emotion welling in my chest. But I am her mother in every way that matters. I was there for every fever, every nightmare, and every triumph. I can't offer her a mansion or European vacations, but I can, and I have, offered her a lifetime of unconditional love and the absolute certainty that the person she depends on will be there for her every single day. The energy in the courtroom was tense. We had presented a compelling case, but it was our word against theirs. It was then that Ms. Hernandez stood up. "Your Honor," she said, her voice ringing with authority. The defense would like to present one final piece of evidence to be entered into the record. She walked to the judge's bench and placed a thick, sealed manila folder in front of her. The folder my PI, Frank, had delivered to my apartment 2 nights before. The folder that contained the truth. Judge Haraman, a woman in her 60s with sharp, intelligent eyes, broke the seal. As she began to read, a subtle change came over her expression. Her professional neutrality hardened into something else. Concern. Then, disbelief. Her eyes flickered up from the pages, first to Thomas, then to Amanda, then to my parents. A cold, hard silence fell over the courtroom. After what felt like an eternity, she looked up. Counsel, approach the bench, she commanded. Ms. Hernandez and Amanda's lawyer went forward. The judge spoke to them in a low, intense whisper, but I saw Amanda's lawyer's face pale. When they returned to their tables, the judge's gaze was like steel. She addressed my sister directly. Ms. Morgan, are you aware of the contents of this folder? Amanda shook her head, a confused, nervous look on her face. No, Your Honor. Well, perhaps you should be, the judge said, her voice dangerously calm. It contains financial records, indicating that your husband's business is facing insolvency, with over $200,000 in outstanding debt. Thomas stiffened beside her. Amanda's mouth fell open. The judge wasn't finished. It also contains extensive documentation of your husband's online search history for the past 6 months. A search history that shows a singular obsession with locating one Jason Reynolds. The judge paused, letting the name hang in the air. Also known as Lily's biological father, a man who, according to these inheritance documents, recently came into a trust fund valued at over $5 million. A collective gasp went through the courtroom. It was the sound of a carefully constructed reality shattering into a million pieces. Amanda whipped her head around to stare at her husband, her face a mask of horror and betrayal. He refused to look at her. The judge then turned her gaze to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Parker, she said, her voice laced with ice. This folder also contains emails and phone records that prove you have been in regular contact with your daughter, Ms. Morgan, for approximately 3 years. This is in direct contradiction to your sworn testimony here today. Testimony given under oath. Are you familiar with the term perjury? My father shrank in his seat. My mother looked like she was about to faint. Finally, the judge looked back at the folder. And lastly, it contains a formal report from the principal of Lily's elementary school, detailing an unsolicited visit from Mr. and Mrs. Richards, where they made unsubstantiated claims of potential neglect in a clear attempt to intimidate and manipulate the school administration. The boom had landed. It was all out there. The debt, the inheritance, the lies, the manipulation. The entire foundation of their case, their carefully crafted image of a perfect, loving family, had been obliterated in less than 5 minutes. What had started as their stage, their performance, had become their public execution. And I just sat there, in the quiet that followed the explosion, and watched their world burn. The judge's gavel came down with a crack that echoed the shattering of my family. The ruling was swift and absolute. Custody was to remain with me. The petition was denied. Amanda was granted limited, supervised visitation to be arranged through a family services agency. And my parents, they were formally admonished by the court for providing misleading testimony, with a stern warning about the legal consequences of perjury. The relief that flooded through me was so intense, so overwhelming, it almost buckled my knees. We had won. Lily was safe. The nightmare was over. But in the row across the aisle, a different kind of nightmare was just beginning. The silence that followed the judge's ruling was a vacuum, instantly filled by a storm of panicked, whispered accusations. I saw Amanda turn on Thomas, her face a mask of pure fury. Her whispers were sharp, venomous daggers I could see, even if I couldn't hear them. Thomas, the smooth, confident businessman, looked like a trapped animal. His face was pale, his eyes darting towards the exit as if plotting an escape. My father sat rigid as stone, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and public humiliation. But it was my mother who completely unraveled. She was staring at me, her mouth slightly open, her eyes wide with a look of utter horrified disbelief, as if she couldn't process what had just happened. As if the universe she had so carefully constructed, where Amanda was the victim and I was the obstacle, had just imploded before her very eyes. As soon as the court was adjourned, the chaos erupted. I was gathering my papers, my hands still shaking slightly, when my phone began to buzz. It was my mother. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. A relentless, frantic vibration. I saw my lawyer, Ms. Hernandez, give me a knowing look. "You might want to turn that off for a while," she advised. I did. As we walked out of the courtroom, I could hear my mother calling my name, her voice shrill and desperate. But I didn't turn around. I just kept walking, out of the cold, sterile courthouse and into the bright, warm sunlight. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The reprieve didn't last long. By the time I picked Lily up and we got back to our apartment, I had 17 missed calls, all from my mother, and a barrage of text messages that painted a terrifying picture of their complete and total meltdown. The first few were pleading. "Natalie, please call me, we need to talk." Then they became demanding. "You need to answer your phone, this is your family." And finally, they devolved into pure, unfiltered panic and blame. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Your father is a respected man in this community. You've humiliated him." That evening, as Lily and I were celebrating with pizza and ice cream, a loud, insistent banging started at my front door. I looked through the peephole. It was my father. He looked furious, his face red and blotchy. I didn't open the door. I wouldn't let him bring his poison into my home, not on this night. He banged for a few more minutes, shouting my name, before finally giving up. The silence he left behind felt like a victory. The next morning, I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I needed to hear it. I needed to understand the depths of their delusion. I sat on my couch, took a deep breath, and called my mother. She answered on the first ring. "Natalie," she cried, her voice a torrent of theatrical sobs. "Oh, thank God. I was so worried. How could you do this to us? To your sister?" I waited, letting her perform. I didn't offer a single word of comfort. "How could I do what, Mom?" I asked, my voice calm, almost detached. This whole mess. You humiliated us in front of a judge. You made your sister look like some kind of monster. After everything she's been through, all the work she's done to get better, how could you be so cruel?" There it was. Not a single word of apology, not an ounce of remorse for the lies, for the manipulation, for the attack on my life and my daughter. In her mind, I was the villain. I was the cruel one for defending myself. I was the one who had created the mess, not them, for starting the war. "She tried to take my daughter, Mom," I said, the ice returning to my voice. "She lied. You lied, under oath." "We were just trying to do what was best for Lily," she insisted, her sobs turning into a frustrated wail. "A child needs her real mother, and Amanda and Thomas could have given her everything. A big house, private schools, things you can't provide. You were being selfish, Natalie. You were only thinking of yourself." It was like talking to a brick wall that cried and tried to emotionally blackmail you. The conversation went in circles, a carousel of blame and gaslighting. There was no accountability, no recognition of the truth. It was all about how I had made them feel, how I had ruined their plan. Later that day, my father called. He didn't bother with tears. His voice was cold, clipped, and filled with an almost palpable rage. "I don't know what you think you accomplished today," he began, his voice low and menacing. "But you have single-handedly destroyed this family. Do you understand that?" "I didn't destroy anything," I replied, my own voice hardening to match his. "I protected my child from a fraudulent, greedy lawsuit built on a foundation of lies. Your lies." "You were supposed to be the responsible one," he roared, his control finally snapping. "You were supposed to just do your part and step aside. All you had to do was let this happen, and everything would have been fine. Amanda would have been happy, the child would have been provided for, and this family would have been whole. But you couldn't do it, could you? You had to be selfish." You had to win. That was the moment I truly understood. For him, this was never about right or wrong. It was about order. His order. In his perfect world, Amanda, the golden child, got what she wanted. I, the dependable workhorse, did my duty and then faded into the background. My feelings, my bond with Lily, our entire life together. It was all just an inconvenient detail in his grand family narrative. My refusal to play my assigned role was, in his eyes, the ultimate act of betrayal. By fighting for my daughter, I had destroyed his family. The irony was so bitter it almost made me laugh. The calls and texts continued for days, a desperate, chaotic campaign to pull me back into their drama. They tried everything. Guilt. Your sister is a mess because of you. Pity. Thomas has left her. She's all alone now. Threats. If you don't fix this, you will never see us again. And even bizarre attempts at bargaining. My mother actually suggested that maybe we could all work something out, where Lily would spend the school year with Amanda and the summers with me, as if my daughter were a timeshare property to be divided up. Through it all, a single, glaring truth emerged. They were not sorry for what they did. They were only sorry that they got caught. They were sorry that their perfect plan had failed. They were sorry that, for the first time in my life, I had refused to be their doormat. Their meltdown wasn't about the loss of a grandchild. It was about the loss of control. And it was the most liberating thing I had ever witnessed. After a week of relentless phone calls and manipulative texts, I knew the chaos wouldn't stop on its own. They were like a storm battering the walls of my home, and if I didn't build a seawall, they would eventually break through. So I did something I had never done before. I initiated the confrontation. I sent a single, simple text to my parents. Meet me for coffee tomorrow at 10 a.m. The grind. Just the two of you. This is not a negotiation. I didn't wait for a reply. I just turned my phone off. The next morning, I walked into the coffee shop and saw them already sitting at a small table in the corner. They looked tired, defeated. My mother had been crying. My father just looked old. For a fleeting second, I felt a pang of something. Pity, maybe. But I crushed it. Pity was the emotion that had kept me chained to them for years. I sat down, placed my keys on the table, and looked them both in the eye. I didn't offer a greeting. I just began. I'm going to say this once, I said, my voice low, steady, and devoid of any emotion. So I suggest you listen very carefully. What you did, lying to me for years, conspiring with Amanda, perjuring yourselves in a court of law, and attempting to take my child, it was unforgivable. My mother opened her mouth to protest, a sob already forming, but I held up my hand, a small, simple gesture that stopped her cold. I'm not finished, I said. For the sake of Lily, who, for reasons I cannot fathom, still feels some connection to you as her grandparents, I will not be cutting you out of our lives completely. But the nature of our relationship from this moment forward has changed. Permanently. I leaned forward slightly, making sure they understood the weight of every word. Here are the new rules. Rule number 1. There will be no more lies. Not to me, not about me. The first time I catch you in even a small lie, we are done. Rule number 2. You will never, ever again go behind my back regarding Lily. No surprise visits at school, no secret phone calls, no manipulative gifts. All communication goes through me. Rule number 3. When you are with Lily, you will not discuss Amanda, Thomas, or the court case. You will not undermine my authority or my role as her mother in any way. You will be grandparents. Nothing more. I paused, letting the rules settle in the heavy silence between us. Every visit will be supervised by me, in a public place, to start. If you can abide by these rules consistently, over a long period of time, we may be able to rebuild some semblance of a relationship. But if you break a single one of these rules, if you try to manipulate or lie or gaslight me in any way, I will file for a restraining order, and you will never see me or your granddaughter again. Do you understand? My father just stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief and wounded pride. But it was my mother who finally broke. "Natalie," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We're your parents. You can't just dictate terms to us." And that's when I delivered the final liberating blow. I looked at her, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, just a quiet, sad finality. "You are my biological parents," I said. "That is a fact of my birth. But the role of parents in my life, that is a position you have to earn. And you have failed. The terms are not negotiable. This is how it is, or it is nothing at all." For the first time in my 34 years, I wasn't asking for their approval. I was telling them the price of my time. I stood up, picked up my keys, and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving them to sit with the wreckage of the world they had created. For the first time in my life, I hadn't bent. I hadn't broken. I had chosen myself. This was a monumental moment. If you're rooting for this powerful decision, drop a flexed bicep emoji in the comments to send some strength her way on this journey. That act of setting a boundary, of finally choosing myself, felt like the first deep breath after nearly drowning. And when I stepped away from the toxicity of my biological family, I was finally able to see the real family that had been standing around me all along. My chosen family. The calls I made that afternoon were different. The first was to my lawyer, Ms. Hernandez. When I told her what I had done, there was a warmth in her professional tone. "Good for you, Natalie," she said. "Boundaries are the foundation of self-respect. You did the right thing." Coming from a woman of her caliber, that validation felt like a medal of honor. That evening, my doorbell rang. It was my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Santiago, the woman who had taught me how to soothe a colicky Lily 10 years ago. She was holding a warm casserole dish. She didn't say much. She just pulled me into a hug, a real, enveloping hug that smelled like cinnamon and home. "I knew you had it in you, mija," she whispered, using her term of endearment for me. "The strength of a mother. There is nothing on this earth more powerful." Whoa. She was one of the people who had submitted a letter to the court on my behalf, a glowing testament to the life Lily and I shared. An hour later, my friends showed up. A few of my fellow nurses from my old job at the hospital, the ones who had thrown me that impromptu baby shower a decade ago. They came armed with pizza, ice cream, and a cheap bottle of champagne. They didn't want to rehash the trauma of the court case. They just wanted to celebrate. We sat on my living room floor, surrounded by Lily's toys, and we laughed. We laughed until our sides hurt. They had seen me at my lowest, covered in baby spit-up and dark circles under my eyes, and they were here to see me at my strongest. They were the sisters I had chosen, the ones bound not by blood, but by shared experience and unwavering loyalty. These people, my lawyer, my neighbor, my friends, they were my safety net. They were the ones who had seen my struggle, not as a burden or a failure, but as an act of love. They didn't offer pity. They offered respect. They didn't see a struggling single mom. They saw a warrior. They were the family who showed up. The ones who offered a casserole instead of a criticism, a hug instead of a judgment, a pizza instead of a perjury. And as I sat there, listening to the sound of my daughter's laughter from her bedroom and the murmur of my friends' voices in my living room, I realized the profound, simple truth. I hadn't lost a family. I had finally, truly, found mine. A year can change everything. 12 months after that day in court, the storm had passed. leaving behind a quiet, peaceful landscape I hadn't realized I was craving. The promotion I had been working towards before everything exploded finally came through. I was now the health services coordinator for the entire school district, a position that came with more responsibility, better pay, and still allowed me to be home every day when Lily's school bus dropped her off. The extra income allowed us to move. We found a small townhouse with a little patch of green out back, a place where Lily could finally have the garden she'd always dreamed of. Our life wasn't extravagant, but it was ours. It was calm. It was safe. The aftershocks of the courtroom explosion, however, had irrevocably altered the landscape of my biological family. As predicted, Thomas left Amanda almost immediately. Without the prospect of a multi-million-dollar payday, his interest in being a stepfather vanished. The last I heard, he had moved to another state. My parents, faced with the potential legal fees from the perjury investigation and the financial strain of supporting a now-divorced Amanda, had to sell my childhood home. They downsized to a small condo across town. The grand stage for their family dramas was gone. And Amanda, for the first time in her life, the safety net was gone. She had to get a real job, working as a cashier at a local department store. She had to pay her own rent on a tiny apartment. Reality, it turned out, was a harsh teacher. The supervised visits with Lily were awkward at first. Amanda was humbled, quiet. The entitled, manipulative woman from the courtroom was gone, replaced by someone who seemed lost. But she kept showing up, every other Saturday for 2 hours, at a local community center. She didn't push. She just was there. About 6 months after the court case, she asked to meet me for coffee, at the same place where she had first reappeared in my life. She looked different. Thinner, maybe, but her eyes were clearer than I had ever seen them. There was no performance this time. "I was wrong, Natalie," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "Not just about the court case. About everything. You are a better mother to Lily than I could ever have been, even if I had been healthy." I was so caught up in what Thomas wanted, in what Mom and Dad expected. I thought biology was all that mattered. But it's not. What you two have, that's real. I'm so sorry. It wasn't a magic fix. It didn't erase a decade of absence or the trauma of the past year. But it was a start. A real one. I accepted her apology, and slowly, carefully, we began to build something new. Not a sisterhood, but a functional peace, for Lily's sake. The visits became a little less supervised, a little more relaxed. Amanda started to become what she should have been all along, an aunt. On Lily's 11th birthday, after a small party with her best friends from school, she handed me a card she had made herself. On the front was a drawing of the two of us, holding hands in her new garden, surrounded by cartoonishly large, smiling sunflowers. Inside, in her careful 11-year-old handwriting, she had written something that made my breath catch in my throat. "To my mom, who chose me every single day. Biology makes you a relative, but love makes you a family. Thank you for being my real mom." Reading those words, I realized the profound truth of our journey. Family, the kind that truly matters, isn't an obligation you're born into. It's a choice. It's a choice you make every single day. It's in the quiet moments, packing a lunch, checking a fever, reading one more bedtime story when you're exhausted. It's in the loud moments, cheering from the sidelines of a soccer game, fighting for them in a courtroom when the world is against you. My value as a person, as a mother, was never determined by my parents' approval or my sister's validation. It was forged in the fire of those 10 years, in the unwavering love between me and the little girl who taught me everything about what a family truly is. It was built on a foundation of showing up, always. This journey has been incredibly difficult, but it taught me that your real family is the people who choose you back, the people who see your strength, not your struggle. What about you? Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family members who refused to respect you? How did you navigate that painful but necessary conversation? Share your experience in the comments below. Let's create a space to support each other. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice and building the life you deserve. Thank you for listening.